Okay, just about ready to get started here. Getting everything kind of set up. Ooh, I need to kind of switch over, unfortunately. Hold on. Oh, it kind of did. There we go. Sorry. Silly me. Okay, get that there. Okay. Weird. Okay. Don't know what's going on there. Okay. Go ahead and mute that. Okay. So everything is looking like we're ready to go. So let me go ahead and switch this over to live. Okay. Okay, so we're at it again. Gonna continue with the Unity programming that I started last week. If you weren't here for that, basically I proceeded to go through the basic tutorials here for 1, 2, 3, and 4. Had a little bit of issues with the packaging. Contacted Unity and they weren't able to recreate, so I don't know what might have happened there. So, but last week I downloaded the 3D game kit. So I'm going to basically continue with that. Now I'm not I don't have like the great artistic ability or anything along those lines. So I'm gonna make the assumption that if I'm gonna be doing any kind of work myself or any kind of game or whatnot, I'm probably going to be sticking with the 2D for the most part. So I'm kind of keeping that for the last portion of this tutorial's information. Then I may be showing this when the 2D portion as I progress. I'm not quite sure exactly how to kind of go about doing it because I don't necessarily want to have people kind of taking the game ideas that my friends produced and make their own. So, you know, I want to try to learn as much as I can and produce what I can. So I don't know how to really go about doing that per se. Um, you know, still stream coding, but at the same time try to keep it fairly focused on you know, my crafting, my game, my friend's game, you know, that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's still kind of um, still not quite sure how to kind of go about doing that. So um, in some ways, you know, I appreciate the open source community and what they do, um, but at the same time, you know, I don't know how much I can really contribute to it, and um, how they really make a business um, out of the open source. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, you know, how do you how are you able to actually sell the product when it's basically free for everybody? So I don't know. Maybe open source does it in such a way where they have like um, the the basic program available for free, but then they make some upgrades for the professionals. Uh, uh, so I don't know. I mean, I get the business side of aspect. You know, you make a product in a business and then you sell it off. I mean, that's understandable. Um, but I'm not quite sure how that the the open source can actually kind of how open source has worked over these years, kind of thing. How is people able to actually generate funds from something that's open source? I haven't really figured that part out yet. But then again, I haven't really delved deep into that side of uh, programming as it is anyway. So, I mean, if you guys have uh, experience with that and understand how that kind of goes, feel free to put that in the chat. Let me know. Um, Give me some kind of thought process as to the process for that. So if there is really no money being made, then I guess my mentality is correct. But I don't know. Some people still make money off of it, so I don't know. Enough talking. Let's get into the 3D game kit and we'll proceed. So. Okay, resolving packages, blah, blah, blah. Took a little bit for these little windows to kind of pop up again, but you know. Hopefully the download from last time uh, uh, I'm not gonna have the same exact problem that I was having last week with the downloading the packages, but we'll see. As it is anyway, I'm not sure what I'm going to be seeing with this particular package, how they are going to kind of instruct me as to um, this process. I mean, I could understand the tutorials from the 1 through 4 because they had like a step-by-step process, but I put as I sent the uh, emails to Unity for them to kind of I know that there's a new version. I'm not going to download it just yet because, I mean, I'm in the middle of the stream. I really do need to take care of that, so I'll skip it for now. And there we go. The editor layout could not be fully loaded. This can happen when the layout contains editor windows not available in this project. I don't know, man. So once again, I'm left with um, the download messing up on me again. Okay, well. So let me see about trying to take care of the see about trying to take care of this, because this is kind of irritating. But I mean, let's see, roaming. No. Let's see, data roaming. Unity packages, maybe. No, don't really see anything there. Although, wait, no, it just got updated a couple hours ago. Oh, there it is. The 3D game kit. Okay. Let's go ahead and delete that. Okay, so basically, if if anyone is wondering what I'm doing here, so I have the program Unity here, and when I did the download for it, it goes into your asset store -5.x. I go inside that, and there's inside of Unity Technologies, there's the interactive tutorials and the lessons 1 through 4. But I noticed that within the asset store 5.x, there was the 3D game kit. So I deleted that game kit. So now I have to re-download it. I'm hoping that that's all that I kind of need to do. I don't know what's going on per se. I'm noticing the fact that I have the game kit temps showing up in the asset store right now as I'm downloading this. It's unfortunate that the team at Unity cannot replicate the issue. I don't know what the issue might be. So, I mean, nothing's really getting blocked. I mean, I'm not getting any kind of, problems from my, from Avastra at this moment in time. So nothing's popping up saying, hey, I had to block this particular program or anything along those lines. So, I don't really know. I don't know where what might have happened to cause the disconnect kind of process. Is it that pop-up that's showing saying, hey, I need to download the latest version? Could that might be tripping up the package? I don't really know. I might need to resend this back up to Unity again and say, hey, listen, here's another occurrence. So, look at my stream. They wanted the specific timestamp of when it occurred. I'm like, well, I'm going through the full tutorial here, so I mean, feel free to watch it and see what I'm doing and see if I'm like messing up somewhere. I don't think I am. I'm using my full-on desktop here to kind of show you what I'm seeing, so it's not like I'm it's not like I'm doing anything in the background to like screw myself over. Come on, you know. So, I mean, mean, could it be like the Avast that's kind of stopping it, or maybe it's the Windows? I don't know. Let's see. You know what? I'm gonna move this over here just in case. I don't want to really showing off any kind of sensitive information or anything along those lines. No. Health for device performance and health warning. Okay, nothing really going on there. Let's see if this yeah. Allows to communicate through Windows Defender firewall. Let's see if there's anything here. No, Unity editors allowed. Although, let's see. Hmm. Hmm. Public and private. Public is marked up, but private isn't. Hmm. Could that be it? Could that be a problem? Maybe. Well, the download is done. Let's go ahead and start it again. See if there's if this causes any kind of issues again. If it does, then I'll probably have to see about whether or not the Windows firewall is actually kind of blocking some portions of it, maybe. So we'll see. If you folks have any kind of questions for me or anything along those lines, or um, you know, if you feel that you might need help with like some particular concept or anything along those lines, I can try to help you out. I mean, uh, like I said, I'm decent when it comes to mathematics and programming, but I'm not gonna say that I'm like the best either. So, fail to import package again. I mean, I don't know, man. It just this is unfortunate. It's like, really, what's going on here? Why? Why is it failing to import a package? I mean, is the download just having a problem because I'm streaming at the same time? Is it not trying to download everything? I mean, you would think that uh, the package or the, you know, if I'm going to go ahead and kind of restart this a little bit here. Um, you would think that when you're doing a download, you would try to make sure that it would check the integrity of the download and check the process to make sure that everything's been downloaded correctly. Check the integrity of the files afterwards or whatnot. Maybe delete the files that are corrupted and re-download if that's the case. You know, I don't, I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Maybe they are doing that. Maybe something is on my end that's blocking it. So um, so let's go ahead and close this out. I'll go ahead and delete the game kit again. You know, I don't know why it's having a problem with the package. Don't really know. Let me see about maybe selecting the private portion and see what happens there. I don't know. Let's try this again. I might have to just go ahead and bite the bullet and you know, download the most recent update, because um, you know, this one is clearly not working for me very well. I mean, it's once again, Unity is um, I'm having the exact same problems that I had last week about the package not being downloaded properly. Um, It'd be kind of nice if, like, maybe a developer was kind of watching the stream and they could kind of see what's going on and maybe give me some ideas as to what could be a possibility, what could be a problem. But I mean, I'm small fry, so I don't expect them to uh, hop on here just for, you know, teeny tiny little me. So I mean, I'll continue to send them, you know, my updates and my problems and see what happens from there. But so far, not exactly the greatest start for me. 20 minutes into the stream and I've gone nowhere fast. Sorry about that, folks. I I really don't want to be, you know, showing a blank screen for you. Oh, here. I'll let you look at some pretty scenery. How about that? Will that work? Okay, but in all seriousness, let me get that back out there. Okay. I don't know, man. Hard for me to kind of say one way or another on this. I'm hoping, because I've selected the private for the firewall, that um, I don't have any additional issues. I don't know what else could be an issue. Um, I mean, I know enough to be dangerous, but at the same time, you know, I don't know everything. You know, you know. There are times where I kind of wish that I could be, you know, uh, someone that can just kind of see what's going on, and it automatically clicks and goes, oh yeah, I need to modify this code, or, you know, modify my network, or modify the program itself in order to accept things. You know, you know, it's cheesy, but sometimes you know, I kind of wish that I was kind of like Neo from the Matrix kind of thing, able to kind of see the code and go, oh yeah, then. But you know, uh, doesn't everybody kind of want something along those lines, don't they? Uh, but you know, all right. So package downloaded. Let's go ahead and start it again. If this kind of fails, then I'm probably gonna have to just, um, I'm probably just gonna have to stop the stream and go ahead and download the latest version and see if that might improve. Um, it could be the fact that my stream itself is um, taking up so much bandwidth that it's not allowing the package to be downloaded properly through, my Wi-Fi connection to the internet. Uh, my landlord has the Gigablast, so I mean, the router itself should be able to handle the amount of transfer, um, but that doesn't necessarily mean that my Wi-Fi can transfer at that kind of rate. So, that's the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head. That somehow, some way, the download isn't being transferred completely. Let's see. This doesn't look good. Yep, okay. Fail to import package. I don't know what to say there, folks. So I'm gonna stop the stream for now. Um, uh, you know, because apparently the download or something like that is causing a problem. I don't know what else to really say about this. This is kind of frustrating for me. Um, you know, so let me go ahead and try this again off stream and see if that might have um, better chances to get through. And if it does come up, um, I'll delete the package. I'll re-download it and bring it back up to this potential window here. And if it still fails, then I can rule out my stream being a culprit at the very least, or at least one of the culprits, maybe. So, okay, well, sorry folks, hold off in a little bit and I'll be right back. Okay. Well, I've returned, but, yeah. So let me show you what's going on right at the moment. So, here I am back. Yay! So, I've tried to get um, I shut down the stream. I tried to re-download the file. I tried to bring it up like normal and whatnot, and I kept on getting the package error, and um, it kept on hanging on the decompressing package. So I clicked on the information that was down below, and it opened up to errors about the decompressing and the fact that it couldn't re-download the package. So I looked a little bit further and I got to the editor log. Now on here, I looked for any, all the possible errors. So I come across with this right here. So error decompressing GZ, 7-zip, scanning drive, extracting, so on and so forth. Subitems error, archives with errors, subitems with errors, details, couldn't decompress package, blah blah blah, failed to import package, um, and so on and so forth. So, needless to say, I don't know what's going on here. This should not be a this should not be a problem right at this moment in time. Okay. Um, Everything should be fairly standard when I downloaded this uh, the packet. When I downloaded Unity, I should not be having this kind of problems with decompressing packages. So maybe maybe it's looking for the file 7 and the program 7-zip in order to decompress. I don't have it. I never installed it on my computer. I haven't really had a need to install 7-zip on it. But I shouldn't have to. That's 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 my concern about this. I shouldn't have to download 7-zip in order to get this package, especially seeing that I look at the system requirements and I don't see 7-zip anywhere within the system requirements. So I'm making the assumption that it should all be handled internally within the package itself. So am I wrong on this? Am I making this incorrect assumption that I should always have 7-zip on my computer to handle the package? I don't really know, but I mean, um, it's looking like someone else had a similar issue, you know, how to fix couldn't decompress package error in Unity 3D. And I looked, I saw that, this person did 25 seconds of having to decompress the information on there. I mean, um, I have it here. I've already watched it, so I mean, I may have to do that just to kind of get this to work properly. But um, I mean, here's the link if anyone wants to kind of do a search for it or something like that. I mean, you can find it on YouTube. You know, um, credit to this guy for you know using the 7-zip to decompress the package, but I shouldn't have to do that. So, and this was dated, you know, over a year ago, you know, November 4th, 2017, and now I'm at, February 2019. It's like, okay, what's going on here? Why is this an issue? Um, but, you know, uh, I'm going to make the assumption that I'm probably going to need 7-zip. So I'm going to go ahead and uh, I'm probably going to have to like stop the stream to handle um, uh, all the administration kind of aspects. Or hell, no, forget that. Let me switch over to webcam so you guys can kind of see that. And I'm gonna stick with you guys with this as I proceed to handle this. So um, I don't think this should be a solution to this, but I'm just gonna check anyway because I mean, I do not have 7-zip on my computer. Um, Run anyway, damn it. What are you trying to do to me? Windows Defender, I know that you're trying to help me with this, but, you know. Alright. Okay, so just in case, let me confirm that I do actually have that installed. Excuse me. Okay, 7-zip has been installed. So, um, all right. So let's try this again. Let's switch back over to live, so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing here a little bit. So the this editor file is located under the local app data. So if you guys, you know, need to know where to find it yourself, you can find it there. You know, uh, app data, local Unity, and then editor, and you know, it's just a standard text message. So, uh, so I'm going to close this out again because it's not bringing up anything. I mean, it's bringing up the standard editor, but I mean, is this a tutorial or is this just basically giving me just a basic layout and that's it? I mean, if it's just a basic layout and that's it, then well, why is it under the um, you know, why am I having to um, you know, it's under the learn process here, tutorial projects. You know, why is it there? You know, if not to kind of teach. So I'm making the assumption, you know, the fact that it's under tutorial projects, it's under learn, that it's going to show me something. I mean, I shouldn't necessarily think about it, you know, when it comes to like the resources and links kind of thing, because this is other information going elsewhere. You know, read more, you know, or here you can download some extra, you know, uh, you know, resources, you know, kind of aspect. But when it's under tutorials, it should give me something. So I'm going to make that assumption that it's going to show me like a similar box like I had in the basic tutorials. So, but once again, I'm going to have to re-download the project. Oh no, no, I have the project. It's just not decompressing. So if I do a start, then it should be fine, right? I mean, I have 7-zip now, so it, you know, one would hope that it's going to be able to kind of look into the like my 7-zip now and decompress correctly. You know, if that's the case. Um, if that is the case, then either Unity, you're going to need to either find some way of including 7-zip within your hub in order to decompress um, using 7-zip in some fashion or another. Uh, Two, you're going to have to uh, instruct whoever's downloading Unity to that they're also going to need to download 7-zip or some other decompressing utility to handle the decompression of your packages, or um, I'm thinking that's handle it yourself. Request that they download 7-zip prior, or you have to instruct whoever downloads Unity to that they need a decompression um, uh, on the download, on the download uh, package, uh, something along the lines of what Java does whenever it's saying, hey, download this extra application. You know, we all find it annoying. We still have no idea why they keep on saying, hey, download McAfee for this. But, it does. So, and it looks like it's still having a problem with decompression. Yeah, this is getting frustrating. Okay. So, that didn't really work all that well. Let's check the editor once again. Yeah, okay. So, me downloading the 7-zip didn't really do anything. So, um, apparently there's something going on within the hub, within the package, that is not decompressing the 3D Game Kit Unity package properly. I don't know what it is. That's getting into um, the hub, uh, the hub tools. That's all Unity. Um, that's all Unity code that I'm not. Uh, I'm not privileged to know. So, um, but something's going on. It's not using my 7-zip to decompress. It's apparently failing on its own decompression. Um, so at some point in time, I'll send this to Unity and you know say, hey guys, you know, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say about this. This is clearly something that is getting beyond um, my abilities to really fix, um, within this itself. So, um, okay, well, and clearly, once again, there's no like tutorials or anything along those lines for this right here. So, um, you know, not much I can really do with this. There's no tutorial, so I mean, okay. Let's let's go ahead and try to deal with this. Okay, wait a second. Okay. So, uh, something, I don't know exactly what package they're kind of working on there, whatnot, but clearly they're trying to, they're having some issues with the package itself. So, let me, let's see. Let me see. Okay. So, so here's this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exact same thing that this guy's trying to do. You know, just use 7-zip to um, just kind of uh, you know, decompress this 3D package and see if that might give me some possibility here. So uh, let's see. How did he selected which one? So 7-zip extract a package. Okay. So so I'm gonna try to do the exact thing, the same thing here. Extract to a 3D game kit and see what happens. Now, you know, anyone should know that this is stuff that you know should be handled by the you know, Unity itself. So uh, so personally, I don't see why I should necessarily need to go about doing this. If it works, then great. We'll continue with the tutorial. I kind of doubt it. Well, I don't know. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Um, okay, so even with this, it's telling me that the CRC failed 3D game kit. Okay, so something else is going on here. So let's hmm, let's remove that for the time being. Not that it really matters all that much. I mean, you guys saw what was going on there anyway. Okay, so CRC failed 3D. Okay, let's see if anyone else has same kind of problems. Okay, project, blah blah blah. Uh, hmm. Okay. He's saying just remove the full-on package folder itself. Um, Let's see. Alright, so let's go ahead and move this back over here. Alright. I'm gonna close that out because apparently it didn't really work all that well. Okay, so let's see. Well, that was roaming that I had there. Let's go back to local Unity cache packages. Packages Unity. Okay, it's saying get rid of COM Unity sign machine. I don't have sign machine here. Hmm. Yeah, I'm just looking at the I'm just looking at this set and it's like, okay, well, I don't really see anything here for me to really delete if I, went that direction. I don't really see this as a necessity either. I mean, unless I have to actually delete this in order to get it to work too. I think this is the wrong way of going about it, though. As it is anyway, um, it's not showing the exact download or the game kit path from the tank. So, uh, okay. Okay, so this guy's also talking about the sign machine issue there. Um, hmm. This guy looked under the packages and he updated one particular version of Sign Machine up. I don't think that that's going to apply to what I'm doing right now, but I mean, I don't really have anything else to really kind of go by on this, so I'll keep on looking to see if there's something here. Um, but I'm not seeing much here. Hmm. I mean, I'm seeing other websites talking about, CRCs and all that kind of aspect. But, let me check this out. 8 months ago, see. Could that be an issue? Maybe for some odd reason it's not in admin mode, so it's blocking the package from being um, uh, you know, the 7-zip was also being blocked because it wasn't being run in admin mode. I hope that's not the case. So, but apparently, you know, based off of what I'm seeing here, they're suggesting that admin mode is, you know, a possibility. So let's go ahead and try it that way. Because clearly, once again, it's not working now. So first off, let's go ahead and go to the location here, and then I'm going to click on the icon, run as administrator. Yes. Let's try this. I'll just go ahead and start it. I mean, the package is already there, so um, if this is if this fixes the issue, then apparently I need to put Unity under the always run by admin process. But that screen right there does not, or that little preparing package decompressing being held up the way it is right at this moment in time doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence either. We'll see. We'll see. Gotta remain positive in this. I mean, I've already done an hour and a half on trying to get this problem resolved, and you know, gotta remain positive somehow. You know, fantastic stream for you guys, right? You know, here I am trying to get to the 3D package, so you know I can at least put something up for my video. Now it seems like I'm just troubleshooting for Unity right at this point in time. Maybe they can, and maybe they should pay me for what I'm doing here. Yeah, no, right. Sure. Email message. Oh, okay. It's just showing the stream results of you know of my first attempt. And yep, once again, didn't go through. So admin didn't do crap. Okay, so just to be sure, I'm going to oh wait, I don't want that one. Want that one? Editor. Okay. Skip through all this. Error decompressing. Same problem. Okay. Well, I mean, you know what? Do I actually have access to the source? I'm now curious. So, wait, what? Um, okay. Well, it looks like this information is you know, contained within the package, you know, understandable. Uh, don't know why they're using this kind of extension. Because this isn't actually on my personal drive. Maybe you know, maybe it's just uh, it's just using the package utility.cpp um, file description kind of aspect. So this could be neither here nor there. You know, when they packaged it all up, you know, they probably took it from their C drive, build slave, Unity build, you know, so on and so forth. So this just might be like a red herring. So, but at the very same time, it's giving the location of which lines are failing under this particular under the C++ uh, uh, coding. You know why it's what you know the particular lines of why this particular lines are failing. So, um, but I don't have access to those. I surely doubt that I would be able, you know, if I was able to kind of do a search, you know, uh, for it somewhere on my uh, C drive, I doubt that it will, you know, pop up. So, um, but I mean, you know, this all possible information for Unity when they see this, maybe I don't know. And it unfortunately doesn't give any additional context as to what's actually on these lines. Otherwise, I'd be able to kind of uh, look at it and see what might be the if there is a problem in the code somewhere. Maybe there's maybe they don't actually have any kind of uh, you know, the error catches or proper error catches. Maybe you know I don't know. Uh, don't I'm not trying to say, hey, these guys fucked up. Okay, it could all be something that's happening on my computer that is causing these particular lines to have issues. I don't really know. Okay, that's I'm just hypothesizing here, so please, take it with a grain of salt that I'm trying to search for answers in this particular problem. So, um, so please don't get offended if Unity guys, if you are watching this, uh, please don't, rake me up one side and down the other because, I'm trying to find a solution to this. So far, I have not. So, I'm, you know, I'm in an hour and 30 minutes into this stream, and uh, I cannot proceed with this particular tutorial right at this point in time. And how am I supposed to understand um, this editor if I can't even get the tutorials to work? So, um, so uh, it is, it's frustrating, but at the same time, I need to figure out something. So, um, uh, hmm, okay. Well, this is an option. Might as well try it. I don't really have any other options to go with. So, okay. Um, okay, so I'm gonna assume that this is what he means by, opening up a 3D project. Uh, Asset Store tab. Uh, Maybe import new assets. No. No. Oh, there it is. Asset Store. You're not gonna find Project Unity.cpp there, Jim. So, might as well just go ahead and stop it now. No need to continue trying to search for something that's not here. So, okay. I'm going to go ahead and delete my attempts for the 3D game kit from the asset store. Right now, hopefully that didn't cause any problems with what's going on here. So, uh, 3D, let's see, game kit. Okay. I don't know whether or not this is the same game kit or not. The little um, the little icon showing the game kit is different. So, okay, terms of service, blah, blah, blah. All right. So, downloading the 3D game kit. Let's try this again, see what happens. I'm hoping that this is the same game kit that is located within that hub pop-up. I have there's nothing on the there's no the icon that there's no icons here that I can see that's similar to what I saw on the Game Hub. Like this one I recognize because the icon here is the same as the what's in the hub, the 2D game kit. So I can kind of say, oh yeah, this is the same one kind of aspect. But I don't know if that's the same. Am I going in a circle? It looks that way. Okay. Why is mine having a lot of errors after loading? So apparently, I'm not the only one that's having some issues with this particular 3D game kit here, guys. Something's going on with the 3D game kit. Matter of fact, I think, just something's going on. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I'm just saying, uh, I know the testers, you guys aren't having any kind of problems with it. You're not able to recreate the problems, but something's going on. I mean, if you guys want to kind of join me next Sunday, because I mean, I'm gonna try to come back to this. I mean, I want to try to learn Unity. So, it's not like, uh, you know, the, if I have a problem with the tutorials by next weekend, or if I can't find a solution with these tutorials on next weekend, then I'm probably gonna have to just drop the editor. I don't know. Uh, okay. Uh, okay. Importing a complete project will overwrite your current project settings. I have no problem with that. Import. It's, it should be opening automatically. But again, it's giving me a problem with it. So, but yeah, okay. So next Sunday, I'm gonna attempt to try this again. Um, I'll send this particular um, these particular attempts to the folks over at Unity. hopefully they can kind of see what I'm trying to do, and try to figure out nothing to import. All assets from this package are already in your project. That's great. Right. Am I missing something here? Maybe this is just, hey, we're gonna open up the 3D just for you to kind of look at. Where's the tutorial here, guys? Is just, am I missing something? I mean, did it download everything properly and I'm just not seeing the tutorial portion of this? I mean, it's a game kit, so maybe it's just saying, hey, we're just going to download all the 3D assets to you, and there you go. I mean, that could be the case. But once again, I'm looking at the aspect of, hey, tools and systems can hook up gameplay without you writing any code. Okay. We created a 2-level 3D game example using this system for you to explore. Discover the mysterious alien planet where our principal engineer, Ellen, has crash landed. Okay. Play. Okay. Yeah. I I mean the package, the asset store is saying something about, the fact that I can it's supposed to be showing me some kind of game or something like that based off of what I was reading from the asset store here. I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing something. I don't know, guys. I mean, let's see. Let me make sure here. Yep, same problems. So, I don't know. I'm not sure really what to kind of do with this. So, um, so yeah, okay. This didn't really help out. So, yeah, okay. Well, let me try running Unity in admin mode again. I mean, I want to continue with this, so I'm gonna just try to download a different package and see what happens. I don't know what else to do, you know, this is supposed to be um, I must be missing something here. I don't know. Um, I don't know what's going on. Um, maybe all the information is in there. I just have to kind of load the project or something like that. Maybe. Uh, this is saying something about the 3D, so I'm gonna go ahead and download that, the survival shooter. So, um, so let me see what happens here. I mean, I'm just looking at this, and it's like looking like, this is kind of the landscape and stuff like that that you should be seeing, you know, after you've downloaded the game kit and opened it up in the project, right? I, I, I would figure, but something's not going well on this. So, okay, I'm seeing a little bit more on this one, so I'm I'm figuring that this particular package is going to be perfectly fine. Just just throwing that out there. Because it's adding all the textures and whatnot, so this is giving me a lot more than what the 3D was doing. So I'm gonna assume that I'm gonna actually be seeing something on this particular package. So we'll see what happens. Okay, don't really need the asset store anymore. Ah, see, this is what I was kind of expecting a little bit more. Follow this tutorial. This is a tutorial project that has accompanying video instructions. Open the instructions in your browser. Each tutorial project has a dedicated forum thread to accompany it. If you need help, visit the forum and ask. Okay. This is kind of what I was expecting on for the 3D. So something's going on. I, again, I don't know. So let's go ahead and open the instructions in the browser. All right. Learn how to make an isometric 3D survival shooter game. Okay. So, version project shown in the videos was created with Unity 4.6. It can be followed with that version, but we recommend that you use Unity 5.1 or greater and read the upgrade guide PDF located in the root of the project files. I'm gonna assume the 2018.3.5 F1 is greater than Unity 5.1. So that's, gotta kind of let that go. Um, I mean, let's face it, this was notified, this particular page was set up, looks like back in 2014. So we'll see what's going on there. Okay. Probably don't need to worry about the slides, at least for now. I mean, if necessary, I can always try to do that, but okay, so let's go ahead and just go to, I guess, the training day phases, environmental setup. Okay, it's part 1 of 10 of the survival shooter tutorial, in which you will set up a pre-designed environment with lighting and background music. Okay. Let's see. 10-minute video.
This is a top-down kind of isometric.
Oh crap! Okay, it's going through my computer sound, or the. There we go. Let's try this again.
You are a boy who is having a dream that all of his toys have come to life. You run around, you shoot these kind of zombie teddies and other things, score points, and eventually meet your demise. So that's what we're going to make. We're going to be learning all kinds of various different things in the editor, from putting together a scene, implementing animated characters, AI, a bit of the new UI, and yeah, all kinds of different stuff.
It's a very uplifting game. You can't win, you can only eventually lose.
Yeah.
So that's the way we prefer to make them. Yeah.
So the very first thing you'll notice is that on my screen I have the project open. We don't want you to have the project open at all. What we want you to do is to make your own new scene, and we're going to put this project together. So if anyone has got the scene open, we don't want you to do that. We want you to make a brand new scene. So first of all, we're going to go to File, New Scene. Then what we want you guys to do, to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page, we're going to ask you to set up the editor in the same style that we have. If you're comfortable with Unity, you've used Unity before, and you prefer to work in your layout of the editor, that's totally cool. You can keep that. But if you're new to Unity, what we'd like you to do is to choose the layout menu in the upper right and choose 2 by 3. So layout, drop down in the upper right and choose 2 by 3. That will get you a style that looks something like this. Then what we'd like you to do is to drag the project panel and drop it below the hierarchy. You'll note when you drag the title tabs of the panels around, they will dock into different spaces. Drop that below the hierarchy, and then you can just drag up the division between those two. Maybe drag this over a little, and then you should be all set. So hopefully everyone's got a view like that. Then what I usually like to do is with the project panel, because we don't really need to use the thumbnails particularly, there's a slider at the bottom which will change to list view when dragged all the way over to the left. So if we drag it over to the left, you're going to see exactly the same as what I have on my screen here. We are working with Unity 4.6, but right now what we'd like you to do is to go to File, Save Scene As, and we will ask you to put this into the Scenes folder. So we don't want you to use the completed assets version of anything, just use the Scenes folder that's in the root of the project. And we're going to...
Okay. I wanted to kind of hold off on that. So, save as. Now there's going to be some slight differences, obviously, seeing that this guy's using an Apple laptop in order to handle the tutorial versus what I have, which is a Windows machine. But okay, so okay, I'm in the save scene. I'm under the assets. And he's telling me to save it under the scenes folder, but there is no scenes folder here. already off to a great start, huh, folks?
Call this level 01. So save it as level 01.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna make my own scenes folder because I don't know what else to really go about. I mean, I want to follow the steps that they have in this tutorial. If this is different, I mean, let's face it, this was done quite some time ago, so let's see. I mean, the gist of it might be the same, but there's obviously going to be some amount of problems here and there. Let me just go ahead and move this directly over to YouTube directly, just so I can kind of, yeah, this was published 5 years ago, so
This is a top-down kind of isometric style shooter game.
For-
You are a
four-ish.
boy who is having a dream that all of his toys have come to life.
so
You run around, you shoot these kind of zombie teddies and other things, score points, and eventually meet your demise. So that's what we're going to make. We're going to be learning all kinds of various different things in the editor, from putting together a scene, implementing animated characters, AI, bit of the new UI, and yeah, all kinds of different stuff.
let's
very
go,
uplifting.
let's
The
go ahead and
hierarchy. You'll note
skip
when you
ahead a little
drag
bit.
The title tabs of the panels around, they will
Get
dock
back
into
to
different
the
spaces. Drop
save
that below
portion.
the 6. But right now, what we'd like you to do is to go to File, Save Scene As, and we will ask you to put this into the Scenes folder. So we don't want you to use the completed assets version of anything. Just use the Scenes folder that's in the root of the project. And we're going to call this Level 01.
Okay,
So save it as Level 01 in the Scenes folder.
done.
When you've done that successfully, you should see the name of your scene up at the top of
Right.
the interface. Okay,
Much
so next thing we're going to do is to set up the environment. So I'm just going to show you that first. So a prefab, just to reiterate how this stuff works, a prefab is our way of providing or saving a game object into the project. You can do that for a number of different reasons, and we'll be saving prefabs in order to spawn them into the game later with the enemies. But for the purpose of the environment, we prepared the model and a number of colliders and other elements. So if you look in the prefabs folder, you'll find a prefab called environment. Prefab's represented by this blue cube icon. All you need to do is to drag and drop that up into the hierarchy. So just to remind you, the hierarchy and the scene are intrinsically linked. Anything that's in the scene is therefore in the hierarchy and vice versa. Just make sure you've got a decent view of this level. You can use the hand tool, of course, up in the upper left, and use Control to zoom in and out, and Alt to rotate around. We don't need to worry too much about the view that you're looking at in the scene view, because we're going to set up the camera to look at a particular part of that later. What we're just going to check is that we've positioned the environment at the origin. So with the environment selected in the transform component, you should see the position is at 0, 0, 0. If it's not, just fill that in, 0, 0, 0, or go to the cog icon in the upper right and choose Reset Position. Then once we've done that, we're also going to drag in the lights prefab. Lights is in the prefabs folder. You simply need to drag that into the scene, and it should light your scene. With the lights, we don't need to worry about the positioning, particularly because it's directional lights. With directional lights, you only need to worry about the rotation. So if I just show you those briefly, you can see that these directional lights are pointing in certain rotations, and they're going to affect anything in the scene. You don't need to worry about where they're positioned. The way this game is going to work is that we're going to have a camera that's looking down on the scene. And what we need to do in order to track the player around and also to be able to shoot is to use something called a raycast, which is going to create an invisible line from the camera to the floor. But we've got a very inconsistent floor. We've got a number of different environment objects such as these stool, the Lego bricks, the broken train, and all these different things. So we don't want to worry about raycasting onto those at different heights. So to make things a lot simpler, what we're doing is we're going to add in a plane quad. So what I'd like you guys to do is to go to Game Object, 3D Object, and Quad. What you'll notice is this creates a very small 1x1 quad right in the center of your game. We're going to reset that to 0, 0, 0 in the transform component. So make sure the position of your quad is at 0.
Okay. Just gonna pause it there for a second there. Okay, so position, he's saying set it back to 0, 0, 0. So they didn't really seem to move it, so
And we're going to rotate it by 90 degrees in the x-axis.
okay.
Finally, we want this to cover the entire game level. So we're going to scale this by 100 in x and 100 in y. We're going to name this floor. So rename from quad to floor. So the next thing we're going to do is to make this invisible. Obviously, you'll notice that it looks pretty horrendous right now. We don't want to actually see this. What we want to do is use the collider, so the outline of this shape. We don't want to use this kind of gray for any reason whatsoever. So a quad is made visible by this mesh renderer component. And because we don't want that, we're just going to go ahead and remove it. So with the floor selected, click the cog to the right of the mesh renderer and choose Remove Component. So with your floor selected, go to the cog icon in the upper right, choose Remove Component, and you should see that you can then only see the collider outline.
Make sure you remove the mesh renderer, not the mesh filter or the mesh collider.
Yeah. Remember, you've got undo if anything goes horrendously wrong, but you should then see that you just have the collider around the outline of the level, something like that.
Okay,
Then,
so
because we don't...
Okay, so far I'm not seeing any kind of change on my graphics right at this moment in time. So oh, maybe it's taking its sweet time on modifying the information. I mean, I'm experiencing some amount of lag on this there, folks, so I'm gonna go ahead and save it real quick. You know, if anyone, as anyone really knows when it comes to programming, save early, save often, so. If you know, I've had plenty of times where, you know, I was trying to work on, you know, some particular project or, you know, homework assignment or something along those lines, and suddenly, like, you know, power outage or, like, you know, I forgot to plug in my laptop or something along those lines, and suddenly, boo, power goes down, and all the code that, you know, you made is, you know, gone. So, just make sure, you know, obviously you want to have some amount of tools to kind of make sure that you don't have that kind of power outage or whatnot, you know. Don't try to make mistakes along those lines, but you never know. I mean, I've had editors crash on me before, so don't make any assumptions that you can modify your code and let it continue on without any particular issues. This is just a bit concerning because what they're seeing in their tutorial over here, with the gray, with their mesh, completely gone, I'm not seeing it on my end. So let me rewind a little bit here. So
a quad is made visible by this mesh renderer component, and because we don't want that, we're just going to go ahead and remove it. So with the floor selected, click the cog to the right of the mesh renderer and choose Remove Component. So with your floor selected.
Okay. Oh, I removed the wrong one. Okay, so he was talking about the mesh render, but it's still right there. Let's see. I removed the mesh collider. That was my bad. So we want to remove the mesh renderer. There we go. Okay. That was my mistake there.
Go to the cog icon in the upper right, choose Remove Component, and you should see that you can then only see the collider outline.
Make sure you remove the mesh renderer, not the mesh filter or the mesh collider.
Yeah. Remember, you've got undo if anything goes horrendously wrong, but you should then see that you just have the collider around the outline of the level, something like that. Then, because we don't want our raycast to check for anything but this quad, we're going to use layers. So a layer is a way of isolating things like raycasting or lighting, for example, to a particular group. So with the floor selected, if you click the layer drop down, you should see that we have a floor layer ready for you. So choose from the layer drop down at the top of the inspector, floor.
Okay.
And then save your scene. The next thing we're going to do is to finish up our environment by adding some background music. So with sound sources in Unity, we can attach them to any object. It's a component that you use to apply a clip to or use scripting to assign clips to. We're going to have a separate game object just to keep things separate and just to keep them nicely organized. So I'd like you to go to game object, create empty, and then rename this background music. So again, return on the Mac or F2 on the PC, just like your operating system, and rename this background music. So we're creating an empty and renaming it background music. Then we can add components to our game objects to make them do different things. So we have a component menu up at the top with a bunch of different categories of things that you can do to your game object to give it different behavior or different functionality. What we're going to add is an audio source. So we can use this component menu, or we can use the add component menu over on the right in the inspector. So because the inspector will show you properties of the game object currently selected, we can go into here and we want to add an audio source. We don't really want to hear the music for this game playing every time you press play in your game, but just to make sure that everyone's works, we are going to do it once. So to assign an audio clip to the audio source, we can use the circle select. We're going to refer to circle select a lot throughout the day. It's the small nipple-like icon to the right of the audio clip. And what that will do is pop up a context window, which is going to allow you to find the file you need. The file you need is background music, surprisingly enough, and simply closing that window will assign it to that. For everyone's sanity, uncheck, play on awake. We also want the music to loop when we are finished with the day, with the game. We do want it to loop. So uncheck play on awake and check loop. In the volume on the component, there is a slider, and we can just drag that down to about 0.1. So that's just to balance it with the other sound effects that we have in the game, and then you can go ahead and save your scene once more. That's the end of phase one, setting up the environment. The next thing we're going to do is look at our player character.
Okay. Pause that for a second there. I just want to verify. Yeah, he set it to point 1. So sometimes it's just easier to type it in. You know, granted, he has it slightly above it, but he used the slider. So yeah, okay. So I don't know if this is playable or not. But I'm going to wait until there are 12 objects in the scene with overlapping UVs. Please see the details list below. Use the UV overlap visualization mode in the scene view or light maps and the lighting scenes for more information. Okay, well, maybe this will be addressed a little bit later. We'll find out. So,
And then you can go ahead and save your scene once more.
okay.
That's the end of phase one, setting up the environment. The next thing we're going to do is look at our player character.
Okay, so I'll have to come back here and give these guys a like for this because while there were some differences in the tutorial here, like for example,
On the same page, we're going to ask you, which
like,
will change to list.
let's see.
You can do that
I'm
for
gonna mute this real quick here, so you guys can actually hear me. So here's the thing. First off, there was no scenes folder in when I went to save as. There's no save scene as either within this particular listing and file. So obviously there's been some changes between what they have here and what we have currently. So, but I mean, you know, applications change over time. So I mean, I figured out, you know, I knew that save as is going to be just as much, but I mean, if someone wasn't sure, they're probably going to go, okay, where's my save scene as? You know, so there's going to be some slight differences here and there. Second difference that I noticed here was the fact that the prefabs that he had selected, if you look here, he has 6 different prefabs here. Out of what I have, I only have 4. So maybe this is stuff that you create later kind of thing, because, you know, I mean, he has Zombear and Helifont in there that we do not have here. So I'm gonna assume that these are prefabs that has already been created based on them setting up this tutorial in the, you know, prior to them doing this conference. But you know, I don't know 100%, so, you know, don't take my word for it here. So so yeah, I'm pretty much done with this step, so I'm just gonna move on to step 2 here. So okay, gonna unmute it, and we're gonna move
So what we're
on.
going to do is we're going to set up our player now, which is going to get them moving and jazzing and bebopping and doing all that stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and locate the player model, which is going to be located in models folder, and we're going to expand that, and we're going to look in the characters folder, and we should see a player. There we go, player, should be right there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drag that either into the scene or into the hierarchy view. So just click and drag and drop, and there he is. And there he is, looking pretty swaglicious. And so, obviously, if we just click and drag him into the scene, he might go wherever, so we need to place them at a specific spot. So we're going to ensure that the position is at 0, 0, 0. If it is, then you're golden. If it's not, go ahead and set it to 0, 0, 0.
Okay.
By typing 0, 0, 0, or again, we have this cog or gear icon, and you can just click reset or reset position, which will put it where we want it to be on the origin. Now, we need specific things to interact with the player in a very special way. And so we want to ensure that we've properly tagged our player so certain things will know when they've come in contact with the player. To do that, we have this tag dropdown here in the inspector, and currently says untagged. And what we're going to do is we are going to click that dropdown, and we are going to select player, thus tagging our player as the player so that the player will behave appropriately when they're playing. All right? All right, fantastic. Now, what we need to do is we're going to go ahead and create an animation controller for our player, which is going to allow us to have all of the neat little animation effects of moving and turning and doing all that stuff. And I'm still zoomed in here. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and locate the animation folder, which we'll just click on right here. Currently, it is in fact empty, and we are going to make an animator controller.
Okay. So once again, we're having a slight difference right at this point in time because there is no animation folder here. Well, so just gonna check these folders, see if there's anything here. Okay, so maybe this is it.
Should we just talk a little bit about the animations that we've set up first?
What a great idea.
Cool. So the model that we've just dragged in is the player model, and what you can do is drag up the preview window in the lower right of the editor. So this model has been animated for you. So when you bring in an FBX...
Okay, wait. Which... there's nothing here on this particular aspect. So what's going on here?
Going to allow us to have all of the neat little animation effects of moving and turning and doing all that stuff. And I'm still zoomed in here. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and locate the animation folder, which we'll just click on right here. Currently, it is in fact empty, and we are going to make an animator controller.
Should we just talk a little bit about the animations that we've set up first?
What a great idea.
Cool. So the model that we've just dragged in is the player model, and what you can do is drag up the...
Okay, this is they selected the player here in the characters. Okay, so yeah. Okay.
Preview window in the lower right of the editor. So this model has been animated for you. So when you bring in an FBX into Unity or a Maya file or 3ds Max, whatever package you use, when you bring that in, you can store animations within it, or if you have a humanoid or biped type model, you can retarget those animations onto similar type of models. This particular thing is rigged in what we call a generic manner. So if I look at my rig, you can see generic up at the top. And what that means is it's a very specific bone structure because our character is going to move like this. It's going to be kind of hopping around. So he's not got 2 arms, 2 legs as a kind of biped would. So the animations that are stored in this particular game object, this model that we've given you, are a move, an idle, and a death. So what we're going to do now is to create a state machine called the animator controller to control when these 3 different animations are going to be played back.
If you're looking in the inspector here, I highly encourage you not to touch anything. right? Because these changes change how Unity imports the stuff, and if you just start clicking, a little box comes up and it's like, would you like to apply? And you're like, yeah, apply for what? And then all of a sudden, your stuff is not going to work later. So just, you know,
so we're doing
look
this
but don't
just
touch.
just to show you where the animation is going to be coming from, and we're going to go ahead and actually implement it now.
All right, so we're going to go back to this animation folder, and again, it's still empty, so no magic there yet, right here. And we're going to go ahead and add what's called an animator controller. Animator controllers are part of the Mechanim animation system. They're basically a finite state machine that just blends animations and does all this neat stuff. It's actually magic. We hired wizards. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create this asset that's going to allow us to do that. So I'm going to right-click here inside this, inside the animation folder in the project view here, and I am going to select create and then animator controller. Not animation, not animator override controller, but animator controller.
Okay.
And I'm going to get this name here, and I'm going to name it.
Okay, so based off of what they're doing here, okay, even though the assets folder here does not actually have the animation that they're referring to, and I'm looking here and I'm seeing all these, it looks like he was about ready to create the player animation controller here, but based off of the tag here of the completed game, I'm going to make the assumption that what they're about ready to do is basically, you know, recreating this, but, you know, doing it by, you know, actual creation, you know, instead of, you know, so I'm not getting this to the point of, hey, I'm going to move this directly into the player or whatnot, and it's all done for me. No, they're actually kind of showing you the process of establishing the animation for the player. So, so I'm going to close back up the complete game because this isn't apparently what they're going for here. Based off of what I'm seeing here, I'm going to need to actually make the folder for animation. So create folder and put in the animation there. Okay, now they were saying oh gosh, what was it? Create animation. Okay. Create animation. Or no, wait. They wanted the animation controller, of course. Yeah. So, and he was about ready to say player animation controller. At least, I believe.
Not animator override controller, but animator controller.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get this name here, and I'm going to name it player AC for animator controller. There we go. And so once we have that, what we're going to do is we are going to actually just click and drag that onto the player, which is going to apply this animator controller to the player. So I'm not going to put it under the player, I'm going to put it on the player, and you'll know the difference because player itself will become highlighted. And I'll let go. I can confirm I did this correctly by clicking on the player, and I see here player AC is now listed in the animator component, player AC, right there. That's how I know I've done it correctly. All right. Now, let's go ahead and look at this animator controller. Now that we have it created, and to do that, I can go to Window, and then select Animator. But easier yet is to see my player AC and just double-click on it, which is automatically going to open up the Animator window. If it's not docked here, you can just dock it by clicking the tab, dragging it, and docking it into the window. So as we were looking at earlier, when Will clicked on the player FBX model, and we looked in the inspector and we saw all those animations and stuff that was baked into those settings, those actually create assets that we're able to use. So if I go back to the models characters folder right here, and again, look at my player.fbx, if I were to expand that, I would actually see the assets that make up this imported model. And so I'm going to go ahead and click this arrow here. And what I see is I see these 3 animations, death, idle, and move, right? So not only were the animations imported as part of the model, but we actually have them as assets that we can utilize. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to take each of these in turn and move them into my animator window. I'm just going to click and drag them and drop them. I'm just going in order here, so I'm just going to do death, idle, and move. The order's not really going to matter because we're going to reorder them in just a moment.
Okay. So go into characters, drop down the player, death, idle, move. Okay. Entry automatically credited an arrow to death for some reason. Not quite sure exactly what that's all about. Maybe it's maybe because it was the first one there, it automatically tied entry into death. I don't really know. So it's slightly different than what we have here. Matter of fact, entry is different because there's no entry in their guide here. So again, I'm like, slight details that are different. Something that we'll have to kind of change or, deal with. So
when you have this done right, you'll see that you have this any state, and then you have a death state, an idle state, and a move state. All right, and so we'll notice that the death state is orange, or whichever state you dragged in first is orange, right? Okay. Orange means it's the default state. Obviously, I do not want death as the default state. It's a sad game, but it's not that sad. And so what I want to do is I'm going to set a different state as our default state. So I'm going to right-click on idle, and I'm going to click set as default. And so that will then turn orange. And I can reorder just by clicking and dragging.
Let me look at that again, because when I right click on here, it says set as layer default state, which isn't exactly the same. So I want to confirm that that's exactly what he meant.
As our default state. So I'm going to right click on idle, and I'm going to click set as default.
Okay. Once again, slight difference here in the little sub menu here. On their example, it is set as state or set as default state, but not as set as layer default state. I'm gonna make the assumption that we are on the base layer here, so it's making that assumption that layer default state is the exact same thing that they're wanting to make there. So critical thinking, folks, critical thinking. So, okay, so idle has been selected as orange. Let's continue on.
So that will then turn orange. And I can reorder just by clicking and dragging and moving things around. If you just happen to be very particular about how things look, you can start building yourself some geometric structures if you really feel like it, whatever. But anyway, so now we have idle as the default state. And so what we need to do is we need to tell the animator when we want to transition from one state to another state, right? So we've got these 3 states. We've got idle, we've got move, and we've got death. And they're self-contained animations. They can just play and all that stuff. But the logic of when we go from one to the next isn't currently in here, right? So what we need to do is we need to create something called a parameter, which is basically going to control when something happens, when something changes state. And we access those parameters right here with this little parameters button. It's very cleverly named. And we have this little plus icon right there. And what we want to do is we want to create a parameter. So the first parameter we're going to create, when we click this, we're going to see we have some options. We can create a float as in a floating point number, int as an integer, bool as in boolean, or trigger. We want to create a boolean, so bool, and we're going to call this is walking. It's very important that you spell it right, like I just did not. There we go, is walking, and then enter. It has to be capital I, lowercase s, capital W, walking. all right? It's important that it's spelled right because we have scripts that you're going to use that reference it by name. So
Okay.
if you name it something else, like Skeletor, when the time comes, it's not going to work. You'll just have to open up. You're going to have to open up your code and actually change it, which you really don't want to do. So we have this is walking, which is a Boolean, which means it could be either true or false.
Okay. Obviously, these guys are mentioning the fact that they've set up predetermined scripts already for this particular Unity project. The fact that he was talking about you needed to be specific is walking is referring to the point that they already have a Boolean in the code in their script that is referencing it by this specific name. Now, this gets into a question of, a coding standard kind of aspect. They designed it in this particular fashion, so they named it is walking, capital I, capital W kind of aspect. You, as a coder, can change it however you kind of want to when you get into the code itself, if when you get to that point, okay? So, now what I'm kind of wondering about, and they didn't really address very much, is they specifically mentioned the fact that they had a capital I and capital W. Okay. If I was to change my Boolean to have those as lowercase, or have like a lowercase I, is the script behind the scenes going to be able to determine those two different parameters? At this point in time, I'm going to assume no, it's not going to be able to determine like a lowercase case I is walking versus a uppercase I is walking is two different parameters based on the fact that they specifically said make sure that you spell this correctly. That's just an assumption on my part for the time being, but just bear in mind that some languages can be very picky when it comes to those kind of aspects. You have to be extremely on the dot precise as to your parameters, or it allows for some amount of flexibility as on the capitalization of the letters. So I don't know what the language is behind the scenes on this just yet. I've seen I've seen indicators for C++. I've seen mentions of C#. So we'll find out. Let's continue on.
And that true or false will dictate whether he is walking. I'm going to create another one now. So again, I'm going to click this little plus icon, and I'm going to select this time a trigger. And a trigger is like a Boolean. It can have a state true or false. But unlike a Boolean, the moment we set it to true, it sets it back to false, right? Which is useful when I just want to trigger something to happen one time, and then it resets itself, right? So we're going to select a trigger here. And this trigger is going to be called, you ready for this? Die.
Okay. Interesting. So, die plus trigger. Really? I get. Why give me this option here? And I couldn't even rename it afterwards. Trigger, die. I mean, you give me this. That's like. Okay, I guess that's more of a search parameter than anything else, but it's like, it'd be kind of nice if I could just kind of say, hey, die plus, trigger, but yeah, that didn't really do that, so. Okay. Yeah, well, you know, let's see.
We listened to a lot of heavy metal while making this. And so die is a trigger that's going to be triggered when the player actually dies. All right, so now what we want to do is, so we have these parameters, which is, great, but now we need to tell Mechanim in the animator specifically how to use those parameters. We need to set up some logic to move us from one to the next. Oh, you're reordering my stuff.
And we're reordering it wrong as well.
All right, so what we want to do is we want to set up transitions, all right, that basically says, hey, this state is capable of going to that state, right? And this state is capable of going to that state. We set up these transitions explicitly so that we can't accidentally transition from, say, like dead to jump, right? Because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So what we want to do is we want to create these transitions, which basically are one-way bridges that define logically how we go from one state to another. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on idle, and I'm going to select Make Transition. And when I click Make Transition, I get this cool little rodeo lasso thingy, which is actually just kind of fun to play with by itself. But we're here for business. So what I'm going to do is once I've confirmed that there's this white line attached to my mouse, I'm going to move my mouse over the Move Animator state, and I'm just going to click, and it's going to connect the two. So now what we have is we have a transition from idle to move. Yep, see, there you go. In case you didn't believe me. And so this is basically saying that we can go from idle to move. All right, so what I'm going to do now is in order to actually dictate when that happens, I have to click on the transition. So I'm going to get real close here.
Too close.
There we go. And I'm going to click, and you're going to see it turn blue. All right, and so now I have selected the transition between the two. And once I've done that, over in the inspector view, we get the properties of this transition. And what I'm interested in is down at the bottom, we have these conditions. What is the condition of this transition, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little drop down right now that says exit time, and I'm going to select is walking, and I'm going to leave that as true. So the way you read this is we are transitioning from idle to move when is walking equals true.
Okay. So that's the conditions right at this moment in time is the list is empty. So plus is walking true. It automatically did that for me. Now, obviously, I can change that if I really wanted to, but and change the boolean to this if I really wanted to. So just kind of experiment a little bit. I'm going to do die. Okay, there's no additional information here, so understandable. So let's go back to is walking there, and just for the hell of it, I'm going to save just to be on the safe side here, folks. So.
Right, cool. All right, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of do the exact opposite. So I'm going to right-click on Move, Make Transition, get my fun little rodeo arrow. Now I'm going to click on Idle. So this is stating that I am able to move from the move state back to the idle state. And I'm sure you can all guess what the condition for that's going to be, but we'll go through it anyway. I'm going to select conditions is walking equals false. So if the player is walking, we play the walking animation. If the player is not walking, we don't. We play the idle animation. All right. Finally, what I want to do is I am going to create one more transition. This time, we want the player to be able to die. And so to do that, we're not going to transition from idle or move or death because we can theoretically die in any state, depending on whichever animation is currently going on. So we are going to use the any state, all right? And by that, I mean the actual green any state. I don't mean you're going to transition from just any state you want, all right? So the one that actually says any state. And so I'm going to right-click on that, and I only have one option, and that's make transition. And I'm going to transition from any state to death. So no matter what state you're currently in, if you die, you die. I'm going to select that transition. You'll see it turn blue. And I'm going to set my condition to be die. Now, since it's a trigger, I don't need to specify true, false, value, or anything like that. It's just if die gets triggered, we immediately switch into the death animation.
The next thing we need to do with this player character is to give him a physical presence in the scene. So if you change from your animator window back to the scene view using the tab at the top, then you can select the player. we're going to add a rigid body. A rigid body component is something that allows the physics engine of Unity to be applied to the object. So we are going to click Add Component and choose Physics and Rigid Body.
It's important that you don't select Physics 2D, Rigid Body 2D. We're doing 3D physics, so just physics.
Cool. So then what we're going to do, because we don't want this to kind of slow down over time, we're going to set the drag and angular drag to infinity. So you can do this actually by just typing INF in the drag box and hitting return. If you've done it correctly, you'll see a capitalized infinity. We do want to use gravity. We want to keep the player firmly grounded, despite this being a dream sequence. And we do want to use constraints. So basically, we're going to use constraints to ensure that the player character doesn't fall forward or fall over any different direction. And we also want to freeze the Y position so that he doesn't sink through the floor or jump up or anything like that. So in freeze position, we're going to choose the Y coordinate and freeze rotation X and Z or Z.
You'll have to expand constraints if it's not currently expanded.
Yeah, sorry. You need to expand constraints. If you can't see those properties, you should see them at the bottom.
Next,
Okay.
we need to make sure things can actually bump into the character, because currently he reacts to physics, but if he doesn't bump into anything, nothing's going to happen. So if you go to Add Component, and then Physics, and then there's a capsule collider along with all the other colliders there. And we need to give it specific settings so we make sure that the capsule covers the player. So if you change the center to 0.2 in the X,
Okay.
0.6 in Y, and leave the Z as 0, or Z as 0, sorry. And we also need to change the height to
0.6.
1.2. So what that's going to mean is that this sort of
1.2.
leaning over character thing here, he's got a little bit of an X offset, so the capsule is going to cover him nicely. So
Okay.
next, we need the player to make a little yelping sound when he gets hurt. So we're going to add an audio source component. So if you go to Add
Okay.
Component, Audio, and then find Audio Source, and we're going to
Source.
change the audio clip from None, using the little circle select by it, to Player Hurt. So when it
Okay.
opens the context-sensitive menu, you can see Player Hurt
Close
there.
that out.
One thing about the selection window is that you can double click to close it at the same time. If you want to assign something, you can open up the circle select, double click will also close the window.
Okay.
One other
good to
thing I'm
know.
going to quickly do, because we've got these settings done, is I'm going to close the rigid body or collapse it up using the arrow next to it, just so that we can see the ones below it.
We do not want the player to make a yelp sound on awake. So we're going to uncheck play on awake. You'll know that if you haven't unchecked that, when you start the game, it'll go, oh. If it
And
does that, go back to this and uncheck play on awake. Right, so we're going to find the player movement script, and that's in the scripts player folder. So if you look in the project panel, find scripts, expand that, and then click on player. You'll see on the right-hand side the different player scripts that we've got. And we've got an empty class called player movement, and we're going to go through making that now.
Okay, so you can assign a script a number of different ways. So a script is just a component like any other component. But what we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop for this one. So I'm going to grab my player movement script, I'm going to drag it up and drop it onto the player game object. When that's done, you should see that it appears as a component at the bottom of the list.
Be sure to save your
Okay,
scene
wait,
before we go on.
hold on
Look
a
in the
second.
project panel, find scripts,
redo that
expand
one,
that, and
just
then
to
click
kinda
on
see.
player. You'll see on the right-hand side the different player scripts that we've got.
Yeah.
And we've got an empty class called player movement, and we're going to go through making that now.
Okay, so you can assign a script a number of different ways. So a script is just a component like any other component. But what we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop for this one. So I'm going to grab my player movement script, I'm going to drag it up and drop it onto the player game object.
Okay.
When that's done, you should...
I wanted to make sure on that because the hierarchy has actually a sub player within the player. So just wanted to confirm that that's exactly what he was kind of intending. So as we can see down here, player movement script has been added. So
should see that it appears as a component at the bottom of the list.
Be sure to save your scene before we go on to this next part too, because we're on a beta software.
So first of all, double click it for opening.
Okay. Now this is kind of odd because they selected the project player movement there and not something within the hierarchy. So the fact that they're going to modify this. Oh, okay. Opens up Visual Studio 2017 on this. Okay. This might take a second. One of the aspects between, you know, Unix system, you know, that Apple has versus, you know, the Windows. Not now, maybe later. That's fine. General's fine. I'm not gonna. I might, you know, have to kind of modify these settings a little bit later if I, you know, once I get a little bit more familiar with it. So, was not really expecting the Visual Studio to kind of pop up right at the very beginning there, but, or, you know, oh, wow, okay, it's taking up the full screen now. Okay, so this is my screen right at the moment. So, okay, so based off of, yeah, while this is kind of loading up and all that kind of stuff, then one of the things that I noticed based off of the script that they were talking about, this is based off of C#. So, so, you know, if you take a look at there, you know, the C# symbol, it's kind of difficult on this angle. Let me see about, maybe trying to kind of zoom in on this a little bit more. No, that didn't really do all that much. But, you know, this right here with the C# is basically indicating that, you know, the scripts in general are going to be under the C# coding standard. So if you're not all that familiar with C#, things might get interesting. So, and unfortunately, I never learned C#. So things will get interesting for me if all their coding process is under the C# language. Now, I've learned C. As C's been one of the languages that was highly used at the colleges that I went to. I haven't used it that much since leaving college. I had like one job that was for 4 months that, you know, I dealt with the C language a little bit, even though they were programming in C++. One of the nice aspects of C and C++ is the fact that you pretty much interchange the two without too much problems. You know, C++, you have a lot more functions that you can use that was already pre-built with C. But you can still program in C and still do the exact same thing. I mean, you can have a C++ file, but you can use all the C tools, you know, I don't know why you want to, because, you know, C++ has the functions kind of built up for you, but, you know, this depends on how you want to kind of code. Um, uh, you know, you can make the assumption that the functions that have been developed for C++ has been developed in such a way where it's very streamlined and you don't have to worry about trying to make sure that uh, you know, saving any kind of processing power or whatnot by using C. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but um, the whole purpose of C++ is to save you some amount of time because the functions have already been created. So um, now C sharp, um, that I forget exactly. Microsoft had a language um, that they tried to, you know, set up as a uh, counter to Java. You know, you had C, C++. Then Java kind of hit the scene, and it started blowing up all over the place, kind of aspect. You know, so uh, one of the positives of Java was the fact that it had the garbage collector, which um, you can basically assign memory to. You know, you can create objects, you can create um, parameters, you know, data values, whatnot. Okay, and all the memory would be handled, you know, by the language itself. Okay, C and C++, if you wanted to do any kind of memory, you actually had to kind of assign the memory to that. So if you wanted to do an array, you had to actually set up the memory for an array prior to actually being able to use it in C and C++. Java didn't need to worry about that. You said, hey, I want a new, um, you know, I want an array. It would set it up for you. You didn't necessarily need to um, worry too much about, you know, the allocation and whatnot, because it would already do that for you. And if you deleted said array or whatnot, in C and C++, you had to actually deallocate the memory. Whereas Java, you didn't have to worry about it. You delete the array, the garbage collector collected the memory for you. So, so Java was getting quite a bit of, you know, praise for that back in the day. If I remember correctly, Microsoft tried to create, I think it was like J++ or something like that. I forget exactly which thing and you know what they tried to call it. And they tried to mimic Java. Unfortunately, I guess they used too much of it. I don't know the exact history of it, so don't uh, look it up in your own time if you want to, kind of aspect. But there was a whole hullabaloo about, you know, how I think it was like J++ just copied too much of Java. So Java, you know, Sun came in and said, hey, this is using too much of what we made. You know, you're using too much of our intellectual property to do this J++. Stop it. You know, don't, you know, you can't do this kind of aspect. So, I think, like, I'm thinking it's J++. It could be a different name. Again, I can't remember. But Microsoft had to basically stop J++ altogether. And so they tried to go in a different direction, and that's how C# came to be. So unfortunately, I never learned C#. I only learned Java, so I can only go with what I know of Java in order to handle what they're going to do here with C#. It may come down to the point where if, because they're using the scripting with C#, it may come to the point where I may have to learn C# in order to do any kind of actual game programming in Unity. So if it gets to that point where my development has to go into the C#, then I guess I'll have to start learning non-tutorials on C#. So prepare for that in the future if it comes to it. I'm going to assume that that's the case. I will need to learn C# in the future for this. So after I get through all the tutorials for Unity, if it's looking more and more like I'm going to need to do C# programming, then I'm going to need to find some way of doing that fairly easily. Now, I have Microsoft Visual Studio 2017 here, but I don't know if this is like a free application that I can use. I don't know whether or not they're going to come, say, hey, you only have 30 days of usage on this. After that, you're going to have to like make a purchase of a license or something along those lines. I'm not 100% sure. I've always been impressed with Visual Studio. When I did use it back in the day, I really did enjoy the debugging aspects of it, to allow for you to kind of step into your code and see all the variables and whatnot, and the data, what data is assigned to those particular locations. The fact that you can go into the memory, the memory locations for every single pointer and say, oh, hey, you can actually see the memory address itself, or you can actually see the, what was actually contained in the memory, which is, can be really powerful in some cases, or it can be also very dangerous too. So the fact that you can basically say, hey, I'm going to, instead of having a pointer to this random arbitrary memory location for this particular data value, I'm going to go ahead and set it to root or something along those lines. Oh, let's destroy this source there. It has safeguards for that, folks. So I mean, it's not going to be like, hey, you're going to destroy your computer by destroying root. No, it does have some safeguards along those lines. So but the idea that you can actually change the memory address can be fairly powerful. You can actually kind of section off where the memory gets allocated. You can kind of put it at the very end of a hard drive if you really wanted to. Scan for a block of memory and always assign it to that particular location or something like that. I don't know. I'm just giving you details that you might already know. Who knows? So, okay. Let's move on, shall we? I've already kind of wasted enough time on talking about this.
Drop for this one. So I'm going to grab my player movement script. I'm going to drag it up and drop it onto the player game object. When that's done, you should see that it appears as a component at the bottom of the list.
Be sure to save your scene before we go on to this next part too, because we're on beta software.
So first of all, double click it for opening, and you should get mono develop to come up.
So there's a number of different ways to open a script. You can either double click the icon in the project panel. You can click open with it selected at the top of the inspector.
Okay.
Or one final way is to, when it's applied as a component, you can actually click the cog icon and choose edit script.
Okay. So
If you give it a
three
moment,
different
it's going to
methods.
open up the script editor for Unity, which is mono develop.
So all of this is going to be done within the class. So you notice there's a pair of
Okay. Now he specifically mentioned mono development here. I am not seeing that within Visual Studio. I'm gonna assume that this is probably a application in Apple that allows you to edit code. So, yeah, it looks like it's more of a an Apple application utility that gets opened up through Unity, much like Microsoft Visual Studio opens up, Mono Develop opens up for Apple. So, yeah, moving on.
Okay.
curly braces or brackets. Okay, so what we're going to start off by doing is making some variables that we can adjust throughout the course of the class. So we're always going to start off with our public ones at the top, and then underneath with private ones. So we'll start off with a public float called speed,
Okay,
which is
hold on.
obviously going.
We're gonna reduce down the size of this so I can kind of see exactly what's. Oh, Jesus. See what's going on over here at the same time. Okay, so public float speed 6F. Okay. Interesting that they set it to public, but okay, we'll move on.
To control how fast the player is. I'm going to give it a default value of 6. So the F on the end there is just saying that this is a floating point variable. Now we move on to the private variables.
So I'm going ahead to type vector3 because vector2 is the first thing it suggests. I could accidentally press return and get that. I want a vector3 type of variable. So these variables we're declaring the type of them first. If you're familiar with JavaScript, you'll remember that it does it the other way around. So in C# we say the type of variable first and then the name.
So this one's going to be called movement, and we're going to use that to store the movement that we want to apply to the player. The next one, we're going to have a reference to the animator component, and we'll call that anim. We're also going to have a reference to the rigid body component, and we'll call that player rigid body. So the next one is an integer called floor mask. Now I'll explain this one. If you remember earlier we made that floor quad, that big square that we just left on the floor. That's the thing that we want to raycast into. And the way we tell our raycast that we only want to hit that floor is we use a layer mask, which is stored as an integer.
If I hit save right now, basically we designed this project on a PC, we've opened it on a Mac, files have different line endings, it doesn't matter at all, just hit convert, everything will be fine.
So the last private variable that we're going to make is a float called cam ray length. So that's going to be the length of the ray that we cast from the camera. And we're going to give that a value of 100.
The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and set up those references.
So we're going to set up the references in the awake function. So some of you will be familiar with the start function. Awake is very similar, but it gets called regardless of whether the script is enabled or not. So it's good for setting up references and things like that. Okay, we're going to start off by setting up our floor mask, and we're going to use layermask.getMask. So then we can pass in a string, which is just a word or a sentence, of the layer that we're going to get. So we put the floor quad on the floor layer, so we're going to get mask from floor. Then we're going to use get component to get the references to the animator, like that.
You'll notice the little angle brackets there. That's just
Yeah.
denoting the type of what we're looking for. In this case, we're looking for an animator, so we write animator. If we were looking for a rigid body, we'd write rigid body, and so on and so forth.
So, like we are,
Not
get
right now.
component rigid body here. And that's all we need to do to set up the references. So next, what we're going to do is put a call to fixed update. So fixed update is a function that Unity will automatically call on its scripts that fires every physics update. So Unity runs on a number of updates. The normal update system that you're familiar with runs along with rendering. The fixed update runs with physics. So since we're moving a physics character, he's got a rigid body attached, we're going to use fixed update to move him. So what we're going to do is get the input from the horizontal and vertical axes, but we're not going to get the standard input. We're going to get the raw input. So whereas a normal axis would have values varying between -1 and 1, the raw axis will only have a value of -1, 0, or 1. It won't have any variation in between those. So what that means is that when we're controlling the character, rather than him slowly accelerating towards its full speed, he's going to immediately snap to full speed, which will give us a much more responsive feel.
Just so you know, an axis is actually input, right? So these axes, horizontal, vertical, jump, fire 1, fire 2, those are defaults within Unity. So if you're wondering what horizontal is, it's in there. So the horizontal axis basically maps to the A and D keys as well as the left and right arrow keys, right? Either of those manipulate the horizontal axis. Pressing the A key gives me a value of -1 in the horizontal axis. Pressing the D key gives me a value of +1 in the horizontal axis.
Okay.
Vertical is another
hold on a
axis. It's
hold-
the W
hold
and
on a
S keys.
second. They did a couple steps here that seemed I didn't see. So let's go back.
1, fire 2. Those are defaults within Unity. So if you're wondering what horizontal is, it's in there.
Okay.
So
Okay, so we're going back to here. They didn't actually, state the steps that they were talking about here. So they went to edit. I didn't. Gosh, all right, what? Okay.
input, right?
Let's go ahead and mute this real quick here. Okay, so they went into edit, project settings. Okay. Edit, project settings. Input, axes, horizontal. It's a good thing that you can actually kind of modify the overall size of this. So, okay, so you can actually have this kind of you can change, like they were stated here. Seeing that this is a keyboard paste kind of a game, you can actually in this particular case, with the keyboard being able to be modified, they're giving the right and left arrows the negative button and positive button, and they had an Alt N for the positive and negative for D and the A. So if just make sure that you get it in the right aspect kind of thing, because you know, they said the positive button is the right. So you have the right arrow button, but what, you know, if you accidentally put A for the alt positive button, then that means, hey, the arrow keys, you're going to the right on with the right arrow, but you're going right with the A button, which is typically the left. So just bear that in mind, you know, if you're, you know, modifying those, uh, make sure to do those kind of correctly. Now, um, it does look like there's more possibilities for inputs and the like. Um, uh, you know, the vertical aspect, they have uh, buttons for the, you know, the firing, jump, um, okay, They have another horizontal here. I wonder if this is, if they, oh, this is joystick access, so, okay, so, they have two different kind of allowances here. You can either have the keyboard and mouse aspect, inputs kind of aspect, or you have the joystick, or you know, maybe a game controller. So there's those. Okay. So uh, he wasn't you know, saying anything about uh, making any changes here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and close this out for now. Um, uh, and Mother Nature is calling me right at the moment, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this on pause here there, folks, real quick. So I'll be right back, and I'll continue with this particular tutorial. Again, I was kind of hoping for the that first one, but I mean, you got to deal with what you got to deal with. So I'll be right back. Okay. Okay, sorry about the wait there, folks. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so let's get back to this. Okay. Oh, need to unmute it.
Maps to the A and D keys as well as the left and right arrow keys, right? Either of those manipulate the horizontal axis. Pressing the A key gives me a value of -1 in the horizontal axis. Pressing the D key gives me a value of +1 in the horizontal axis. Vertical is another axis. It's the W and S keys as well as the up and down arrows. Fire one is your left mouse button or left or right control, so on and so forth. If you're curious, you can go to the input manager. I believe Will just had that up there for a second ago. And that's where these axes exist, and that's how we set them up. But the ones we're all using here are defaults, so there's nothing special that you need to do to get those.
Yep. So you can go ahead and put in the vertical axis as well. We're storing that as a float called V. So these are private variables within fixed update, so we can use them within specifically fixed update. So remember that the variables that we created earlier are outside of these functions, so we can use them within any of the functions in this script.
Fixed update and awake are automatically called by Unity. They're mono-behavior functions. But we can also make our own functions that we can call within those fixed update and awake. What we're going to do now is create a move function that we can call on fixed update later to move our character.
So we're basically going to split up the actual operations of this player movement script into movement, turning, and animation. We're going to put them into separate functions to keep them all modular.
If you make a move function, it's going to have two parameters, a float called H and a float called V, and unsurprisingly, those are going to be the input that we will pass into this function.
It automatically did an on animator move, which is not what I wanted. Oh boy. Excuse me. Didn't want to sneeze in the mic and blow all your ears out. Hopefully, still didn't do that, but we'll got another one coming. Muted the mic that time. Hopefully that was okay. So, all right. But void move. Okay, so I don't want it to automatically create something like that for me, seeing that it's not. You know, I'm trying to keep with what they've provided on what they provided on the tutorial. So. Again, I'm not quite sure why they're not using any of the, what's the name of them? What are their names? There's a specific name for public, private, protected, and just blank. Gosh. They go by a specific name, and I'm blanking on it all of a sudden. But again, but it's neither here nor there. Like I said, my memory is never like 100% here, guys. So I know that, why they kind of need to be in place. But I can't always remember the exact names all the time. So, gosh, really wish I could remember it. I'll have to mention it next time. So, as it is anyway. I normally stop the stream about 8 o'clock, which is 30 minutes away, so I do want to try to get through a little bit more on this particular tutorial than where it's at, so let's continue on.
We call it. We have this movement vector that we stored earlier, and we want to set the value of that. So if you type movement.set, then you get the chance to put each of the x, y, and z components of those. So we're going to use h for its x component. We don't want any vertical components, so we're going to put that as 0. We're going to use an f because it's a floating point. And then v for the z component. So what that means is x and z are flat along the ground. So the horizontal and vertical movement that we give it will translate to lateral movement in the game. Now we've set that, we have a bit of a problem, because if you move just in the z-axis or just in the x-axis, then you've got a value of 1, like a size of 1 for that vector. However, if you use both, then the length of the vector is different. It's 1.4, so we need to change that so that you don't get an advantage by moving diagonally. What we want to do is normalize that. So what that means is it's going to take the direction that we have, but it's going to make sure that the size is always 1.
Effectively make sure the player moves at the same speed regardless of which key combination you use.
We don't want it to move at a speed of 1. We want it to move with our speed. So we're going to times that by our speed variable that we stored. Also, this is called every fixed update. So we don't want it to move at 6 units per fixed update. It would move 6 units every 50th of a second, and we wouldn't see our player ever again. So instead we're going to change it so that it's per second. And the way we do that is by multiplying by time.delta time. Delta time is the time between each update call. So if you're moving it by that much per 50th of a second, over the course of 50 50th of a second, it's going to move 6 units. So finally in this function, the last thing we need to do is actually apply that movement to the player. So we're going to do that using a rigid body function called move position. So move position moves a rigid body to a position in world space. So we need to move it relative to the position that the character currently is. We need to add our movement to the player's position, the transform.position plus the movement. So it's going to be his current position plus this input that we've given him to move him slightly further along.
Next thing we're going to do is look at the turning of the character.
Again, we're going to make a new function. This time we're going to call it turning. Don't require any input for this, any parameters I should say, sorry, because the direction the character is facing is based on the mouse input rather than the input that we've already stored. The first thing we're going to do is create a ray that we can't.
They keep on moving in and out on the zoom and changing the position on the screen. I can't always see exactly what they're doing there, but you know. Moving on.
Passed from the camera into the scene.
Let's have a little look at how that actually works first. If you have a look at this diagram, we have a representation of the camera, the screen, and the level plus the floor quad around the level. So that box that you're looking at there is effectively your level. The floor quad is around that. And the camera, if you think of the camera as something that's looking from where you're looking at the game on the screen forward onto the game level, you can cast a ray, a single sort of invisible line from that point to the floor quad to get a particular position back. And we want to use that because we want the character to turn and face the point of wherever the camera's looking. So when you move the mouse around in the game, he's going to turn around and face that position so that you can turn around and also shoot in a particular direction.
So we see this end bracket on line 40. Make sure that's there. So a real quick gotcha that everyone always does is they move their functions down outside of the class by accident, right? So if you have void turning with your open and closed brackets and you don't have another bracket immediately after that, you missed one. And don't like just add another one because then you're going to have one in the wrong spot and another one in the wrong spot. Instead, just move that function back up so that it is inside the class.
So the first thing we're going to do in this function is going to create a ray. So we call that cam ray because it's a ray coming from the camera. And we're going to use a function of the camera, the main camera, called screen point to ray. So what that's going to do is take a point on the screen and cast a ray from that point forwards into the scene. So the point that we're going to give it is the mouse position. So it's always going to find the point underneath the mouse, if you imagine. So if you're looking at the game, there's a mouse on your screen. The point underneath that mouse is the point it's going to find if that hits the floor quad. We need to get information back when we do this raycast. And in order to get information back from this raycast, we need a raycast hit variable. So that's what we're creating here. So the next stage is to actually cast the ray that we've created. So we created this imaginary invisible line, and now we need to actually perform the action of casting the ray so that it can hit something. Now a raycast function will return true if it has hit something, and it will return false if it hasn't. So we're going to put that inside an if statement. And if it has hit something, then the code within the if statement will be carried out. If it hasn't hit anything, then the code within the if statement won't be carried out. So we'll just skip out of this function. So that's what that little if at the start there is for. So we need to give this a number of parameters. Let's start off with the ray itself. That's the positions and directions of the cast that we're going to have. We need to use an out variable for the floor hit. So out means that we're going to get information out of this function. And we're going to store it in that floor hit variable. Next, we need to give it a length. So how far are we going to do this raycast for? And that's the variable camRay length that we store earlier. And finally, we want to make sure that this raycast is only trying to hit things on the floor layer. So that's that floor mask that we created earlier. So remember, since this is an if statement and a function, there should be two closed brackets at the end there, or two closed braces, sorry.
Okay, hold on a second. The code over here is causing me a little bit of problems here on positioning. So, okay. Reduce this down in size a little bit, maybe. There we go. Alright.
So if you see, you've got if, open brackets, physics.raycast, open brackets, and then at the end, we need to close both of those brackets again. Okay, so we've got the open curly braces afterwards, and this will be the code that's carried out if we've hit something. So we need to create a vector 3 from the player to where the mouse has hit, and that's the floor hit dot point. So that's the point that it's hit the floor minus transform dot position. That's the position of the player. We don't want, so we're going to apply this to the character to make him turn, but we don't want him to sort of start leaning back. So we need to make sure that the y component of this vector is definitely 0. Now we can't set a player's rotation based on a vector, so we need to change that from a vector into the horrible word quaternion.
So quaternion, basically speaking, is a way of storing a rotation. We have a vector 3, but we can't use that to store a rotation, so we use a quaternion. So we're going to create one called new rotation, and quaternion is also a class that has a number of functions, of which we're going to use one called look rotation.
So what look rotation does, the default for characters and cameras and things like that in Unity and in most 3D modeling, is that the Z-axis is their forward axis. So we want to make the player to mouse vector the forward vector of the player. So that's all that this function is doing when we give it the player to mouse.
Then we actually have to apply it. So we're going to address the player rigid body.
I'm going to use the move rotation function. And since we don't want to give it an offset, we're trying to give it a completely new rotation. We're just going to assign it like that. We don't need to do transform.rotation plus new rotation. It's just this rotation.
Okay, so that's our turning. The next and final function of this, we're going to look at the animation.
Okay, so after the turning, we're going to make another function called animating. Now, we do need to give this the H and V parameters, because whether or not the player is walking or an idle is dependent on the input. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a Boolean variable called walking. And we need this to be true if either the H variable or the V variable has some value. If it's 0, then there's no input on that axis. We don't need to worry about it. But if either H or V has a value that's non-zero,
that little data
then
there for a second there.
it's true and the player is walking. So what that complicated bit of code there is doing is saying that, first of all, H, is that not equal to 0? That will return either true or false, depending on whether it's 0 or not 0. Or is v not equal to 0?
What this is basically saying is, hey, did we press the horizontal axis or did we press the vertical axis? If we pressed either of those, we're walking. If we didn't, we're not.
So the reason that we're doing that is that we want to pass this to our animator component. So remember we made a parameter called isWalking. And the way that we set that is we say anim, so with our reference to the animator component, set bool. So we made a parameter which is a type bool, a boolean, true or false, and it was called isWalking. So first, to actually set this, we tell it which one, so the isWalking parameter, and then we give it a value. So we could here write true or false, but we want to use walking, the variable that we just made.
So the very last thing that we need to do in this function, in this class, is we need to put calls to those functions that we've made. Currently, they're just functions sitting there by themselves. We need to make sure that those functions are actually being called and actually being used.
These three functions aren't happening until we tell them to. We haven't actually called them anywhere in the script. They just exist and are waiting to happen.
In fixed update that we created earlier, we already got the input. We stored that. Now,
Okay, I'm going to interject something in here. So I don't know whether or not they're going to be adding additional information into the animating here. Based off the fact that they created a new variable to handle the whether this basically this OR statement of whether or not the H parameter it has some kind of different value or the V has some type of value. I have to make the assumption that they have the possibility of creating some additional code down here, like, hey, we're going to set walking back to false or something along those lines later. But that doesn't really make any sense. Why would they go about doing that? Because they're setting up their own value here to allow for true or false. Now, if anyone that's done any kind of coding before, this is information that you really don't really need to do. I mean, if you I haven't dealt with C#, so I'm gonna assume that this is still possible. What I would do is I would take this and move it right inside there. So you have basically the check of whether or not the H and V has changed. And this is the exact same value that you would get here. So this is basically extra. This is just a variable that you don't really need. So even though it's still local, this is a data value that's put on the hard drive for a split second, which you don't really need. You already have the data values there, and you can just do the comparison, and you're pretty much done. So, but just for the heck of it, because I'm following this tutorial kind of process, I'm gonna go ahead and put this back. But just bear in mind that you really didn't need the bool walking there. So. It's just an extra step that isn't really necessary, based off of where we're at currently on their tutorial here. If they never come back to it, then it's best to kind of remove this bool and put the information there. But I have to. Because we're only on step 2 of this particular tutorial, and I don't know where they're teaching it to a room full of additional folks, trying to learn Unity. I'm guessing. Um, I don't know exactly where this is kind of taking place or whatnot. Unite 2014 Training Day Project Nightmare. Okay. Now, I'm sure if these guys were doing their own kind of game or whatnot or setup, I'm sure that they would understand that, hey, you don't really need this. I'm going to assume that those coders understand that possibility. I'm sure that they're doing it this way as a point of instruction. So they're just wanting people to kind of understand that, hey, this walking bit is, all about whether or not the character has moved, and if it has, then we set the animation to that, whether it's true or false. So, yeah, okay. Still not sure. Well, let's see. They haven't really given any kind of, public, private, protected, or anything along those lines for these. So, if I remember correctly, it defaults to private. So, I could be wrong. Or close to ish private. It's better to kind of based on my limited knowledge here, it's typically best to make sure that you kind of specify whether or not it's public, private, protected, whatnot. So, and to be honest, I don't even know if C# even has protected or not. I know protected is in Java. I don't know whether or not it's available in C#. So that's obviously something that I'll need to find or figure out. So yeah, okay. Let's get back to the tutorial here because I don't have that much more time on this.
Now, after we've got the input, we now need to call these functions that we've
I'm gonna
created.
rewind a little bit here.
So we call
They just exist and are waiting to happen.
in fixed update that we created earlier. We already got the input. We stored that. Now, after we've got the input, we now need to call these functions that we've created. So we call them just by using their name and then passing in the values if they're required.
So move requires 2 floats. We've got our floats for input there, and that's all that we need to do. So we need to say H and V semicolon. Then we'll call turning, which doesn't take any parameters. And finally we'll call animate, which does. Like that. These are in fixed update, so they're being called every physics step. So that is the end of that script. So what I want you to do now is to go to File, Save, and switch back to Unity. If anything's wrong...
Okay. I'm going to interject something in here real quick on this because they didn't really mention it per se on it, but I figured, I'll add to their little tutorial aspect of this. when they call these functions, they're passing in the, the H and V values that they get from the horizontal and vertical. And they pass it into move and animating, H and V. Now, if you accidentally do V first, then the value that you have for the float here for the vertical gets passed in for the horizontal and not for the vertical. So if you're ever kind of doing this kind of process, make sure that you have the right order in mind. Because if you, like for example, if I did V and H, then the movement would be exactly opposite of what you're trying to do, kind of, or the direction would be different. So, like for example, if you're trying to move forward, you're pushing the up arrow to kind of move forward, but because they're reversed, okay, the your I believe the up arrow is the positive, so you'd be basically moving to the right. So just bear that in mind, that you don't want to make that kind of mistake when you're putting these values in. So make sure that your values here match up with your values down here. What you can do is maybe have a little bit more descriptors on your float values here. Like, you can say, like just put in the horizontal and vertical as their names kind of aspect, and you can just put horizontal and vertical in for the parameters there. So, and do the exact same thing down here, so you can kind of understand that, hey, when I mean H, I mean horizontal. When I say V, I mean vertical. It's all up to you kind of aspect, but sometimes when you use variable names that have no kind of descriptions to them, then if you were to ever kind of come back to your code and you see H and V somewhere, then it might take you a second or two to understand what exactly it's referencing. So just bear that in mind. So yeah. Okay, so it's telling me to go back to Unity, so let's go ahead and do that. So
You'll see an error at the bottom of the screen in red. When you have no errors in your script, when you press play at the top of the editor, you can move your character around with the arrow keys, or W now is to go to File Save and switch back to Unity. If anything's wrong, you'll see an error at the bottom of the screen in red. When you have no errors in your script, when you press play at the top of the editor, you can move your character around with the arrow keys, or W, A, S, and D. The animation should function, but the actual movement of the mouse should be a little bit tricky right now because we haven't moved the camera to the right point. So the camera isn't seeing the entirety of the floor quad yet.
okay, I want to test this out before it kind of moves on a little bit. So here's, oh. Okay. So I can control the movement of him. There's really no like major movement or no like animation per se. Oh, there it goes. Okay. It looks like the animation is still kind of like in the idle a little bit, so it's not responding all that quickly. I mean, there's the idle. There's the movement. So but once I stop, the the movement animation stops as well. So I'm not quite sure exactly what's going on there, but you know, we still got a couple more. Yeah, and well, got 30 more seconds here, and let's see. And about 9 more minutes for the camera setup on this portion. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it pretty soon. Let's go ahead and finish off what this guy was about ready to say prior to calling a night here, there, folks. So let's listen.
That can be a problem, but we're going to solve that in the next phase. So you should be able to move around. You know, if I move the mouse up away from the floor quad, then it doesn't rotate. As soon as I move it back over there, the raycast kicks back in and I can turn around and run around like this. Okay, so we're at the end of phase 2. Phase 3 will be just very quickly setting up the camera, and we're going to have a quick look at the script that will make that camera work.
Okay, so so I'm just kind of curious. Again, movement doesn't seem to be responding that fast. It looks like it goes into idle first before it allows for the movement to register. So not quite sure exactly what the deal is with that. Maybe it's maybe the idle animation has a set length to it, so it doesn't respond to the movement until the idle animation completes. So once you're done moving, it goes through the entire process of the idle, which it looks like it's the case, and then it goes into the movement animation. So, which is a very quick animation. So once you stop with it, it stops fairly quickly, but yeah. So it looks like the animation is still going through the full loop of that animation before allowing for the next animation to kind of take over. So there's a little bit of problem when it comes to the animating, I would imagine. So right, okay, so I understand what's going on here. So let me kind of get back over here real quick. So I'm moving around right at the moment. It's currently in the animation of idle right now. Okay, and once the animation is done, then it registers that there is some movement, and therefore it sets the animation for the is walking. So the problem with this right at this moment in time is the fact that the animating script over here is not complete, which I'm gonna assume that they're gonna address later in the tutorials, because if walking is true, then it should set the idle animation to false, meaning it should stop the idle animation automatically to allow for the animation for walking to take over almost immediately afterwards. So and then vice versa kind of thing. If walking is false, then you can change the set the bool for is walking to false, and then set the idle animation to true. That kind of aspect. So it's looking like they are planning for more with the animating here. Um, so interesting. Now, I will state, okay, that when it came to the positioning of the camera, um, the focal point, the process of keeping the camera kind of on the character or whatnot, and having it move around it. That's information that I'm I'm familiar with, but I'm not like an expert at it. So this portion right here, the whole turning aspect with the camera and whatnot, that's that kind of got me a little bit. So um, I may struggle with this portion with the camera work a little bit when I actually start moving on to on my own process kind of aspects. Um, so that's something that I'm probably going to need to kind of work on a little bit more as we kind of move forward. But with that, I think it's time for me to kind of call it a night there, folks. So this is typically the time where I typically shut everything down. Everything's saved, so I can just go ahead and close this out for where it stands right now. Um, I'll just need to remember that next time I'll start on part 3 of this particular survival shooter tutorial. Uh, and I'll continue working on this particular tutorial next week uh, and go from there. Again, I apologize the fact that the beginning of this stream, the whole hour and 30 minutes loss, I kind of wish that that wasn't the case. I kind of wish that I could kind of get into their tutorials, their information dump um, on it, but um, like I said, I don't know what happened there. Uh, so yeah, um, it's, I guess if there are any people watching my stream, then thank you for kind of sticking with me on this. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, you know, if you did kind of come here to kind of watch this with me, then um, I appreciate um, uh, I appreciate you guys coming in to kind of watch me step through this. If you have any questions uh, concerning this particular process with Unity, or if you have like any like general programming questions or math questions or something like that, feel free to post those in the comments or in the chat. I will be posting this to my YouTube channel, so if you have any questions after the fact, a couple days down the line, months, years, who knows, feel free to put a comment in on the YouTube channel video, and I'll try to address it at that particular point, hopefully. If not, then maybe someone will provide an answer for you as well. So, but with that, I think that's about it there, folks. So, thank you again for joining me on the stream, and I will see you next time there, strangers. Um, oh, almost forgot. I'm gonna be streaming Evil Genius again tomorrow, so I'm on the second island building up that island. So feel free to join me again tomorrow night, 4 o'clock to 8, and I'll see you then. So yeah, take care, folks, and see you next time.